Good morning, everyone. The service for Betty is now just about to start with the entrance Amazing Grace by Daniel O'Donnell.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, we have already come. 'Twas grace that brought us safe this far, and grace will lead us home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, with no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see.
Good morning. And on behalf of the children of Betty Simpson, Agnes, Pat, Anne, Betty, Catherine and Esther, welcome to the celebration of their beloved mother Betty's life. An extended welcome to Agnes's husband Doug, to grandchildren Nicole, Donna, Dean, Roy, Katie, Nikki, Mandy, Sarah Jane, Carol Ann, Finlay, James, Nicola, Charlene, Elizabeth, Dawn and Christopher. Now I do hope I have forgotten nobody, and if I have, apologies. The service is being streamed as there are members of the family, both in Australia and England, who cannot personally attend today. Finally, without naming each of them, There may be some of Betty's 28 great-grandchildren attending, and the icing on the family cake will be Betty's 11 great-great-grandchildren. Quite an achievement for a woman who reached the grand age of 97. My name is Mary Martin, and as your celebrant today, I have been given the great privilege of sharing a glimpse of this remarkable woman's life. But before I do, although this is a celebration of Betty's life, it would be remiss of me not to speak of the anguish her family have felt since she died. Betty fought her way back time and time again from illness. She even conquered COVID twice. But on Friday, the 16th of December 2022, after yet another infection, Betty died peacefully with her family around her in Canbro Care Home. Although devastated by her loss, the family are consoled by the fact that they have had her for so many years and for the joy, the fun, and the love she brought into their lives. You were given an order of service as you entered. Can I ask you to take the time now and have a look at this? It's a short summary of Betty's life through pictures, songs, hymns. A poem written in memory of her by her granddaughter Mandy for the family who cannot be here to say their goodbyes. This will be delivered by Betty's great-granddaughter Danielle during the service. In the first of the pictures, Betty is looking fabulous in red. This was taken on her 90th birthday when she was on a cruise. More about that later. The second is Betty as a fresh-faced teenager, no doubt planning her dynasty. The mix of songs and hymns are personal favourites of hers. I'm quite sure there are many here today will know of her love of Daniel O'Donnell. This booklet starts the amazing story of Elizabeth Simpson, a woman who was considered Queen Bee, mischievous, funny, a person who made up her own words, had absolutely no filter, was straight to the point, and did a great impersonation of Popeye. Betty was born on Wednesday the 4th of March 1925 to Bessie and George Burns. She was the second oldest of 4 children. Annie, Rena and Jim are all now deceased. Very sadly, Betty's mum died of what was called then white leg, more commonly known as a deep vein thrombosis, 9 months after she had her youngest child, Jim. The family were then brought up by their mum's sister Agnes and her husband Robert. The couple went on to have a family of 4 themselves, so this remarkable woman was then homemaker to 8 children, while her husband Robert was away in the army. When Betty got a little older, she wanted to stay with her dad and her granny Burns, because she didn't like the thought of her dad being on his own. She moved into the house on the grounds behind the Eagle Inn, called Bannon's Land which was owned by the famous actor Ian Bannon's family and who Betty had gone to school with. She attended Langloan Primary and Kildonan Secondary. She left school at 14 and worked in the munition factory in Coatbridge, making the shells for the bombs for World War II. From the age of 14 to 19, Betty lived through the war and would be 16 when the Clydebank Blitz took place. Although 18 miles away, she would be in air raid shelters and hear the bombing quite clearly. Times were tough, but community was strong. In her late teens, Betty met Patrick Simpson. She was engaged at the time to an Irishman called John MacDonald. Betty lost her heart to Pat, and poor John lost Betty. A Dear John letter was sent with the engagement ring enclosed. I was advised she never got an engagement ring from Pat. Betty and Pat were married on Wednesday, the 2nd of May 1945 at Coatbridge Register Office. Betty was still working at the British, but was now in the canteen, and Pat was a ganger on building sites. Their first house was a room and kitchen on Bannon's land. Their first 3 children were born there when they lived there: Edward, Agnes and Pat. A very different way of living from today. The family moved to Townhead, then on to Huntley Drive in Old Monkland, where the remaining 5 children were born: Anne, Betty, Catherine, Esther and Margaret. Growing up with Betty in charge was absolute bliss for the Simpsons. She was so soft-natured that the kids took advantage of that nature regularly, running riot, having a great old time. In the early days, she took Edward in the pram to Coatbridge town centre. She left the pram outside Woolworths, as you did in those days, and went shopping. When she got home, Pat asked her, "Where's the wain?" Yep, she had forgotten to go back for the pram and the wain. These were times when the mammies would join in the games with the kids. She would always tell them when Dad was on his way home, because life was a bit stricter with him. Every now and again, Betty would leave Pat and head to her sisters in Margate. This would be for a couple of weeks, just to prove a point. Then she would head back. There was a time when she was there, she took a cleaning job in a hotel near her sister, just for a couple of weeks before again coming back. Love always seemed to conquer all, because she always headed home. Family holidays would be berry picking at Blairgowrie. Betty would take the family. They would live in huts on Aitkenhead Farm. It would be rabbit for tea, but the kids thought it was chicken. They loved it. They would also do away days to Ayr and Portobello. Life was simple, with not a great deal of money, but it was great. Betty had a wee Jack Russell called Trixie for a long time. She would take her out in her shopping bag. Trixie hated men and wouldn't let Pat near Betty, especially when he had a drink in him. The dog would just sit and growl at him. They also had greyhounds, Betsy and Billy, which Betty walked. There were times when she walked from Carfin to Coatbridge after they had been raced. A woman who was never off the go. Betty and Pat's marriage was of mixed religion, something that was frowned upon in the west of Scotland due to religious bigotry. This was not the case for them. Religion was part, and Pat would say, let the kids decide themselves when they get older what they want to do. Now, Betty did love listening to the bands during the Orange Walk. So, to see this, she would say she was going shopping. Pat, of course, was no fool, and always knew that shopping was the signal for going to listen to the music. She worked in the council offices, cleaning, and there was a time when she was asked to cover someone's cleaning job in the public toilets at the fountain in Coatbridge for 2 weeks. One day when she was finishing her shift, a lady came in to use the toilet. Betty locked up and off she went home. A few hours later, the police showed up looking for the keys of the toilet. She had locked the poor woman in, leaving her shouting and screaming for help. Betty's socialising was the bingo and was called Bingo Bess. She loved it and was sometimes quite lucky. Esther remembered if she did win, the Waynes would be bought duffel coats. As the family got older, she became a home help. Betty was full of kindness and generosity. One of her clients was blind, so Betty not only did what she was paid to do, but went above and beyond, taking the women's washing to her own home to do it for her. In 1967, when she was 42, Betty suffered the worst thing imaginable for any parent. Her oldest child, Edward, was killed at the age of 19. Unlike today, there was no counselling, but the pain and anguish still existed. With the help of family and the knowledge that she still had 7 children to consider, Betty Simpson's true grit and strength got her through it. She also started smoking and continued to do so until the age of 97. Now, Betty was never considered the best cook, but the one thing she excelled at was cleaning. As her daughters left home to make a life for themselves, the one thing they always dreaded was mammy visits. Now, it wasn't that they didn't love seeing her, but when they knew she was coming, the house was cleaned and then cleaned again. It wasn't the first time Betty would stroll into one of the girls' homes and run her finger along something, checking for dust, or cast a well-trained eye over the skirting boards. If Catherine had cleaned her house, Betty would have someone check that the mop was wet to ensure she had done what she said she'd done. 2 of her girls, Agnes and Anne, immigrated to Australia in the 70s, which would be another loss to her, as there was no digital contact like today. Flights would be expensive and the contact would be minimal. Throughout her life, Betty managed 5 visits to Perth, Australia, with her last being when she was 82. She would spend 6 glorious weeks at a time with her Australian family. No doubt teaching the same things she taught when at home. Skirtings and tabletops should always be free of dust. I would now like to invite Betty's great-granddaughter Danielle to come forward and read the poem dedicated to Betty by her family in Australia.
From your family who cannot be here. We are your family, spread far and wide, hurting today as we can't stand by your side. We are here for each other, but not there for you. To hold hands of our loved ones is all we wish to do. You were the head of our family for so many years. We are left with your memories, both in our happiness and tears. You visited our homes, both far and away. The memories you left us will forever stay. Although you have left us for the heavens above, you will be kept in our hearts forever with love. Today is the day that we say our goodbyes. We will hold each other and look up to the skies. Don't look back, don't falter, don't wait, for we know those who love you are at heaven's gate. Good night to our angel, now with the stars above, we send you to heaven on our wings of love. Thank you.
Abide with me will now follow Danielle's beautiful recital as part of Betty's Australian family's devotion to her.
Abide with me, fast
In 1985, Betty suffered another loss. This time, at the age of 60, it was Pat. Again, Betty, although devastated, surrounded herself with family to help her through her grief. She was from a generation that no matter what happened and what life threw at you, you picked yourself up and you got on with it. When Pat died, Betty couldn't settle and moved from Mitchell Street, where the family had lived for 17 years. She moved 5 times, from flats to sheltered accommodation to assisted living. During this time, Betty still managed holidays, caught up with Auntie Betty on a Wednesday and Friday for chat nights, also called gossip nights. Going to see her favourite singers, Sydney Devine, at the Pavilion Glasgow, and of course the wonderful Daniel O'Donnell with her sister Annie and Auntie Agnes. Betty was a woman who moved with the times. And as the digital era came in, Betty embraced it. She used mobile phones and computers. It never fazed her. This was a woman who, by the time she was in her 90s, had speed dial set up on her mobile and used a laptop for online bingo. Absolutely amazing. She was a woman who was always full of fun. And from when her grandchildren were young, would take her teeth out and impersonate Popeye. There will be some great memories of all that fun. She hated the colour yellow. And a memory was shared that at her 70th birthday, someone gave her a present of a yellow cardigan. Not one for mincing her words. She told them to take it back to the shop because she didn't like the colour. She loved holidays at home as well as abroad. Her favourite time was spent with Margaret in her tourer caravan at Aberfeldy. In 2004, Betty suffered yet another loss when her youngest daughter, Margaret, died at the age of 46. She was 79 and yet again had to go through the heartache of losing a child. She not only lost her own children, but helped both her daughters, Catherine and Betty, when they lost theirs. She had the strength of a lioness. Betty hated alcohol, and when in company would be the person who counted the number of drinks people were having. She even once sent Esther to the bar with £2 to get a round of drinks. I don't know if that actually happened, did it? Did you buy all those drinks? She was very proud of her appearance, loved her hair to be done, and never wore makeup. At New Year, the girls remembered her good dress with the red roses on it. That would be worn and a new apron placed on top of it. After a period of respite in Canbro Care Home, Betty decided she would like to live there, as she loved the staff and the company. This was organised for her, and 3.5 years ago, Betty became a permanent resident of that care home. Her name in the home was Queen Bee. She had all her own belongings in her room, and when she was ill, the room door was opened and the bed positioned so she could see everything that was going on. The staff would love all her stories. Betty had the most wonderful relationship with Julie, Christine, who she called Catherine, Ella, Irene, who she called Ellen, David, Mags, who she called Madge, and of course Tracy, who always cleaned her room correctly. The change of names was Betty being mischievous, as was her telling them she would be going private. She loved them as much as they loved her. There was a time she phoned Esther to say that Betty's car had broken down, but told her not to worry, as the IRA was on its way to fix it. She really did have a play on words. Betty Simpson was a little woman with a big personality. She was afraid of nothing or no one. A woman who lived through wartime and the heartache of grieving her own children. For her 90th birthday, she went on a cruise to the Canary Islands and Morocco with her 5 daughters. All the staff on the cruise were calling her Mammy. She was an inspirational woman to everyone she met. To her family, she was their Mammy and Granny. She was their everything, and they were hers. When you look about today, you see the great legacy she has left, and all those things taught by her, especially her cleaning, will live with the family forever. As the 23rd Psalm, "The Lord is my shepherd," plays, can I ask everyone to reach into their mind and find their favourite memory of Betty? This is your time to reflect about her and what associated you to her. Soon we will be making our way to Old Monkland Cemetery to say our final goodbye to Betty. Before we do this, I have been asked by the family to thank everyone for attending today and for the many messages of sympathy, cards and flowers received. A special thank you to all Betty's friends, carers at Carnbrough Care Home. The care and love given to her was wonderful. For those unable to attend the graveyard, a sincere thank you for all your support today. There will be a reception at the Tudor Hotel after Betty is laid to rest, and everyone is welcome. A final thank you to Brian and his team at McLaren's for the funeral arrangements today. And can I please ask that everyone removes their car from the car park today, as there is another funeral due in after this. The exit today is again from Betty's favourite, Daniel O'Donnell. It's called Remember Me. Please do just that when you hear this today and in the future. Thank you.
I was born in Bethlehem many years ago, and my father sent me down to change the world we know. I performed some miracles, I brought love and peace, and I'm the reason for Christmas Day, so please remember me. Remember me when you raise your glass. Remember me, I died for you on a cross. You unwrap your Christmas gifts and your heart is filled with glee. Take a moment to set aside and just remember me. Just remember me. I'm beside you every day, in everything you do. And even though you can't see me, I'm there to help you through. I watch you laugh and I watch you cry, I try to make you see. I don't want anything in return, but just remember me. Remember me when you raise your glass. Remember me, I died for you on a cross. You unwrap your Christmas gifts and your heart is filled with glee. Take a moment to set aside and just remember me. Just remember me. Just remember